Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Divisional Round Highlight Haven NFL Recap Show. I'm your host, Matthew Heiserman, and today we are joined by Josh Wolver of Josh's Sports Report to break down each and every game that took place during the Divisional Round of the NFL playoffs. Josh, how you doing?
Pretty good, Matt. Exciting weekend of football. I like the intro. I think it's the first time I've been on with the new intro. I like it. Pretty nice.
Yeah, I
Thanks for
mean,
having me on.
yeah, of course. Just got the new intro yesterday. So if you're watching this, make sure you let me know what you think of it. But I probably will be having it on for some future episodes. As always, we will be accepting callers using the link in the chat. We will also be watching the chat if you have any questions. But let's jump right into things, starting with Texans at Chiefs. Chiefs 23-14 victory. I feel bad for anyone who, you know, had the Chiefs covering the spread because a safety at the end of the game on a punt was the reason that you probably lost money if you did that. But Josh, tell me your thoughts on this game.
Yeah, Matt. You're right. Kind of funny situation there with the betting line. Um, but I mean, it's a strategic move. They wasted a lot of
Yeah.
time, and they knew they would win at that point.
Yeah.
But besides that, as for the meat of this game, if you watch this, there's no other way to put it, except that Patrick Mahomes is getting special treatment, and this is not something that's new because it's happened for a while. And it's happened, it's happened constantly throughout his career. But here's the thing, I feel like it's risen to a new level. They called Will Anderson for a roughing the passer. I mean, he touched him. He touched him. It was, if that's roughing the passer, then we shouldn't be playing football, guys. We should be
Yeah.
playing two-hand touch. Um, so, yeah, there were certainly, and then Mahomes got two unsportsmanlike conduct penalties and tried to flop for a third one. So it was bad. Something's got to be done, especially moving forward, especially because it always feels like there's this Chiefs bias hinted in there somewhere. But as for the actual game, Kansas City, it's fair to say they escape again because Houston had a chance to win this game. They really did, and they probably didn't play well enough to beat a team that's going for a three-peat, but they certainly hung in there. But Travis Kelce, my goodness, what a day. 7 receptions, 117 yards, and a touchdown. Mahomes only had 177 total yards, and well more than half of them were to Travis Kelce. He had a big game. CJ Stroud, I mean, he was fine. I guess serviceable is a good way to put it. I mean, maybe mediocre, below average. No touchdowns, no interceptions, 245, 19 of 28. So nothing too special there. Joe Mixon did carry it pretty well with 88 yards and a touchdown. Um, but just the underlying factor is that this game could have gone Houston's way. There's obviously
Yeah.
the refs didn't win this game for Kansas City. There was a factor of it, but the Chiefs still played well enough to earn themselves another conference championship appearance. What's new, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I hate all roughing the passer calls. Not necessarily all of them if the call makes sense, but a lot of them you're going to see just are dumb if you're playing a contact sport. Like at that point,
Yep.
make the NFL the Pro Bowl and do flag football. I don't know. It's just that one especially was extremely unnecessary. This will be the seventh straight NFC championship game for the Chiefs, and this was Andy Reid's 300th career victory. As you mentioned, obviously a lot of questionable penalties. Now, CJ Stroud, I would argue, actually had a really bad game because, yeah, the stats don't look atrocious. He didn't throw any interceptions, but when it comes down to it, if you're trying to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, I wouldn't say he made that much of an impact, which isn't always necessarily a bad thing, but not making an impact against Kansas City is not going to get it done any day of the week. As you mentioned, Joe Mixon, Nico Collins, they both had a solid game. Mahomes, nothing special, I wouldn't say. 16 of 25, 177 passing yards and a touchdown. But you mentioned how good Travis Kelce was. This is the closest resemblance we've seen to prime Travis Kelce all season long, if you
Yep.
ask me. what we saw this last game. Houston had 8 penalties for 82 yards. They also allowed 8 sacks, and I'm sure you saw this. Texans cornerback Chris Boyd shoved their special teams coach
Yeah, that was
Frank
bad.
Ross. So there was clearly just like a lot of miscommunications. Tempers were flaring. Not a great look for Houston as a whole, especially Chris Boyd. And then
Yeah,
Houston, as I mentioned, ended up covering the spread because of that uh, odd. I'm not odd play because we see it a lot, but a smart play that probably made a lot of people mad. And then, I mean, this game wasn't too crazy, right? This wasn't the best we've seen the Chiefs play. Their offense still didn't look amazing compared to typical playoff Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, but this is enough to get it done against a team like Houston. Now, I don't know next week against Buffalo. Then they're really going to have to step up their game. But for right now, this
for sure.
felt like more of a freebie, even if they didn't play 100% what they're capable of, and they did end up doing just enough to get the job done.
Yeah, Matt, I got two things to add on top of you
Mhm.
here. Number one, you talked about Travis Kelsey. I mean, yeah, obviously,
Yeah,
such a huge game. But then when you look at Mahomes, he really didn't incorporate anybody else. Their next leading
yeah.
receiver was Xavier Worthy with 45 yards, followed by Noah Gray with 13. So there was really nothing else happening. And 177 yards, one touchdown, no interception, and the Chiefs win by one score. I mean, if that doesn't sum up how Kansas City has played all season, it's been an underwhelming season for Patrick Mahomes standards. The Chiefs have come out in the end. They've played well enough to win, but there were certainly times in almost every game this season where you were like, man, if that goes the other way, I don't think Kansas City comes out on top of it. And well, they've won 16 games this season because
Yeah.
of it. So clearly they have a recipe for success. It's not the pure dominance that we've seen in years prior. But Matt, I mean, we can talk all we want about how fraudulent they were to get to this number one seed, but it's working. They're heading to the
Yeah.
conference championship game. So what can you say now?
I wouldn't even consider it fraudulent at this point because if you're fraudulent, you're losing some of
Yeah,
those close games.
they've
You're
proven
not
it in
going
close
you're
games.
not going 11-0 in one possession games. You're not fraudulent if that happens. You're fraudulent if maybe you go 8 and I don't know, maybe you go 8 and 3,
Well,
you
how
know.
about Minnesota?
Yeah.
What are their regular season? And then in the two games that matter, they get blown out in Detroit and they get blown out in Arizona. I mean, the Vikings seem pretty fraudulent. They had a 5-0 start, and then they lost one game and they lost two games the next 10 weeks, and they won 14 games this season. They were pretty fraudulent.
I mean, when it comes down to it, a win is a win no matter how you
Yeah,
get it. And even if it's a close game, if you have 11 of these wins, that's still more than a lot of teams could say they have.
I
But
agree.
mhm. Now
And
moving
the
over.
second, can I just say one more thing
Yeah.
about this game?
Mhm.
It's about how injury decimated the Texans have been,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Even if they're going to lose this game, they've still won a playoff game when this season when they came out as underdogs. But their wide receiver room was super banged up, right? Like Nico Collins was their leading receiver, but after that it was Xavier Hutchinson and John Mechie. Like they really had nobody else besides Nico Collins. They got so banged up for a receiving room that came into the year with such high expectations that I kind of feel bad for Houston because it less injury decimated. CJ Stroud's play gets elevated. The whole offense's play gets elevated. Who knows? But sorry for interrupting you, Matt. Let's move on to our next game.
Yeah, and I'm going to enjoy talking about this game, obviously. Washington Commanders, 35-31 victory. I
45, you
don't even
mean?
know what to say. I was speechless after this
Yeah.
game. And to be honest, I've had what is it? Sunday, Monday. I've had 3 days to process it now, and I
Mhm.
still can't believe the fact that we're one game away from the Super Bowl. Like that just yeah, I know you probably haven't felt this. I know I haven't felt this before. But yeah, it's absolutely amazing. But jumping into the recap of this one, obviously Jaden Daniels, what a game this was for him, per usual. 22 of 31, 299 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. He's just not phased in the playoffs. I like he's more calm than a majority of veterans in the NFL in the playoffs. And that's by kind of a landslide, actually. He's shown everything that you want to see from a high quality veteran as a rookie, and he's accomplished a lot more than a lot of those other quarterbacks could say that they have. Brian Robinson Jr. in this one, 15 carries, 77 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. He looked a lot better in this one than he did against Tampa Bay, obviously. He averaged 1.6 yards per carry against Tampa Bay. He looked a lot faster in this one, obviously was dealing with that injury last week. I don't know to what extent, but he definitely looked a lot more healthy in this contest. And then another big game from Diami Brown as well, 6 receptions, 98 receiving yards. I think I mentioned this last week that Brown's contract is up after this season, so he is making an incredible case for him getting an extension, obviously, or a new contract. Terry McLaurin, good as always, 4 receptions, 87 receiving yards, and a touchdown. Obviously, had that really long touchdown that kind of looked like a busted play, to be honest. So that was a really, really nice play. And then Jared Goff, 23 of 40, 313 passing yards and a passing touchdown. He had 3 interceptions. However, Goff did take a big hit by
Yeah.
Frankie Louvu on Quan Martin's pick six. So I would say that probably affected him a little bit throughout the remainder of the game. And then Goff wasn't the only one to throw an interception. You also have to look at Jamison Williams. He had an extremely costly interception. Now I want to break this down. At this point in the game, Washington was leading 38-28 with just over 12 minutes left to go in the
Yeah.
fourth quarter. I
Right.
understand that the play had a lot of potential, but taking that risk down 10 in a winner go home game is extremely questionable by Ben Johnson. And if Detroit did happen to score on that drive, then it would be a 3-point game with around 10 minutes remaining. As I mentioned during my specific, more in-depth recap of this game last night that I had with Lions beat reporter Jeff Risdon, this didn't feel like an appropriate situation to take that kind of risk. We know that Detroit takes a lot of these risks and makes a lot of these kind of plays, and this just didn't feel like a good time to take one of those when you're already losing, and doing something dumb is just going to dig yourself into a deeper hole. I really, really, really didn't like that call. Gibbs was obviously amazing for Detroit, 105 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. St. Brown as well, 8 receptions and 137 receiving yards. But in the first half alone, the Commanders had a combined 315 yards, 15 first downs, and 31 points. The Lions defense had just 1 pressure in the entire first half. I've talked about this before, how Jaden Daniels can struggle against the blitz. He has way more scrambles than what you would want, obviously, out of any quarterback, which makes a little more sense as a rookie, but still 75 scrambles per PFF in one season is absolutely ridiculous. So I think the Lions obviously could have done better blitzing in this game, especially in the first half. And then, as always, this was a game, an extremely aggressive game for Dan Quinn. The Commanders went 3 of 4 on fourth down in this contest. They now have attempted a total of 9 fourth downs throughout 2 playoff games this year. And another interesting stat, Marshawn Lattimore was targeted just 1 time, didn't allow a single reception, which is obviously a great bounce back to see. I don't know if it was just the matchup last week, or maybe he is more healthy now. He's probably had a little more time to adjust to working with the team because that was one of his first games as a Commander. But he looked a lot better in this game. Didn't look like he was getting tested as much in this one. And then obviously Commanders offensive guard, Sam Cosmi tore his ACL, which is going to be a massive loss against Jalen Carter and the Eagles D-line next week. That's probably my biggest fear about our game next week. And, just as a fun stat, I'm sure you probably know this. This was the Commanders' first time making the NFC Championship game since January of 1992. It is great time to be a Commanders fan right now.
Wow, Matt, you went over a lot, so that means I got a lot to respond to. Number one, let's talk about your big point there, not the time and place for that play call and the trick play. And I'm going to agree and disagree at the same time. Here's my thing about it. I don't hate the play call from the Lions and their staff and Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell. I'm sure you mentioned it. They're risky. That's what their DNA is. They live and die by the risk. But here's the thing, Matt. You can take calculated risks in the NFL. You practice these plays all the time to execute them in the games. But what did Jamison Williams not have to do? To throw the ball. He's an athlete. He can run it. He
Yeah.
can do something else. He can turn that into positive yardage. You're right. He didn't have to loft it up into double coverage as a wide receiver who doesn't throw the ball. I mean, it's hard to blame him for a throw that bad, but it's not hard to blame him for his decision making. I mean, at most, if there's a guy coming at you, take a seat and take a 4-yard loss. Why are you forcing that into, double coverage? Your man is locked up being guarded. That's just a bad decision on
And
his
we
half. I
saw
think
him
it's a
get that
fine decision from the coaching staff.
we saw him get that 61-yard rushing touchdown earlier in the game. Like, that's
Yep.
the kind of stuff you see out of Jamison Williams. Why didn't he do it on
His
that play?
speed. I
Yeah.
completely agree. His speed. And you know what? They exploited it. The Commanders knew the
Yeah.
run was going to be coming when Jared Goff exited, and high school football, what was it, state champion Teddy Bridgewater in his first appearance with the Lions. Did they think he was going to throw it? I mean, I get that it's not your traditional hand it off up the middle to Jameer Gibbs and pick up 5. But I mean, come on, there's got to be a better way to stop the run. Teddy Bridgewater is not going to go in there gunslinging it. But that's something for another day. As just for the Commanders themselves, this is another thing that we also saw last week. It was clean football. No sacks allowed. They punted once, they didn't fumble, and they didn't throw an interception. So all 4 of those categories, probably the biggest 4 offensive mistakes wise, I guess, they made one mistake and they punted once. And they had 4 penalties for 25 yards, which, yeah, penalties aren't great, but 4 for 25, they extremely limited it. Again, I mentioned the risk factor. They go 3 of 4 on 4th downs, and going back to last week, yeah, they've converted 75% of time on 4th downs. It's mind-boggling. They didn't allow a sack, and they didn't turn the ball over. And that's why you just scored 45 points on one of the best teams in pro football. And another thing this game taught me, outside of the stats, outside of whatever you look at in the box score, is that the Commanders can hang with anybody, because we did not know this heading into this week. Because during the regular season, admit it. I mean, anyone who watched any Commander football, right? I mean, they were beating up on some teams here and there, and they were taking care of
Yeah.
their 500 business. But come on, beating the Lions in the playoffs and knocking out an NFC heavyweight, and you are 1 win away from the Super Bowl against your division rival, might I add, that you've already beat this year. Like, the Commanders are in a great spot. They can hang with anybody. They can play with anybody. They've legitimately solidified themselves, in my book, as a team that contend and will contend going forward. And that, to me, means more than anything you look at in the stats, reassures you that Jaden Daniels, how great of a season he has, what his leadership looks like, what this Commanders offense can look like at its peak. 45 points on the lines is not easy, but they win a bomber, a boomer. They scored 28 in the second quarter, Matt. I
Yeah.
mean, offensive firepower. I'm not going to sit here and act like both teams didn't. I mean, at one point, every single time you looked up at your TV, there was a 40-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
And oh my goodness, we're at halftime. How is the score this big? If you had the over in this game after the second quarter, you were like, dang, I can go to bed. I've got some money secured, because there was fireworks all over the place. So the Commanders can hang with anybody. They played clean football, and that was another key. And then my last thing I wanted to talk about was the Lions, because what a sucky way to go out on one of the best seasons in franchise history, the best season in franchise history, second year in a row where you feel like this Lions team is destined to win it all, and second year in a row they fall short of the Super Bowl. And this year they fall short of the conference championship. Jared Goff, 3 interceptions. Matt, I couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely, he was fatigued after that hit by Frankie Louvu. He got rocked. And you know what? The fact that he came back in and he threw only a little bit above 50% completion rate in this game, 3 interceptions, and it shows on how much they relied on the run game when you look at Jameer Gibbs, 14 carries, 105 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jared Goff was certainly fatigued, and the 313 yards looks good, but they were playing catch-up that whole second half, so they almost had to throw it. Matt, congrats on the win. The Commanders are legit. What a shocking upset. I mean, I can't believe it. Who would have believed that the Commanders would beat the Lions to advance to the conference championship at the beginning of the season? It's a real head scratcher at this point, because the Commanders are like St. Peter's in that 2021 March
Yeah.
Madness run.
Mhm.
It's like it's a fairy tale story at this point. And you as a Commanders fan, you could tell me better than anybody else could. I mean, what are the emotions like right here? Did you not think this was a throwaway development season?
I mean, there's been a lot of emotions, obviously, this season. I didn't expect to make it this far, obviously, right? That's simple. I did not expect to make it this far.
Nobody
And I
did.
think, and I've said this many times, no matter what happens the rest of the season, this year has been a success. But I mean, I'm just going to take whatever we can get throughout the rest of the season.
Keep it going.
Interesting stat here. Every team that won this round did not have a turnover. That's pretty surprising. And then, you know, nice to finally have a QB on our Commanders, Matt. It's been over 20 years. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, a good team only needs a good quarterback. When you have Jaden Daniels on your team, anything is possible. And I think that's when you're really able to focus on the surrounding cast. That's when you're able to build pieces. But until you have that good quarterback, obviously you can't have that high of expectations. So this has been a massive year for Daniels. And the Commanders as a whole. I must admit, I'm missing Tressway a little bit. Like, I kind of got used to him out there. It's been a little lonely without Tressway on the field, but I guess that's obviously a good thing. Now we do have our first caller with Josh being on the stream. We had a caller in the first time
I'm
we did a
excited.
live stream,
Wow.
but you weren't there for that one. You had to miss that one. So we do have a caller in this one, and I would like to welcome. Hello.
Yeah,
Connor
what's up?
at school. Lamar sucks.
Connor at
what-
school.
What's up, boys? How you doing?
How you doing, Connor? It's great to have you on. I'm doing great.
I'm doing well. Just wanted to come in and talk some football. What happened on Sunday, I think, with the Baltimore Ravens is despicable. I forgot his name, but I know there was a Ravens fan on here. I think it was Saturday or Sunday. He was on.
It was Sunday.
Okay, thank you. He was very, very confident entering that game, and I think I heard him say potentially they were going to win by 2 scores. I think you're going to say lose by 2 scores. I mean, talk about a pitiful performance.
Talk about missing the 2.
This is a team that is expected to make the playoffs every single year, and they do just that. But I think the biggest thing for Lamar Jackson and his squad is getting over that hump and being able to win meaningful games in the playoffs, which he showcased he's not able to do. 3-5 record over 8 games. Yes, Mark Andrews dropped that 2-point conversion, and he had a rough fumble earlier in that game, but I think it just expands beyond that. I thought their offensive unit as a whole struggled overall. Derrick Henry, who the Ravens fan I thought said was going to be an X factor, and the Bills weren't going to be able to stop him. That was not the case. He basically got shut down every which way he tried to win. So, Matt, congrats to your Commanders, and I'm rooting for them on Sunday. Hopefully they can.
I'm not. Go Eagles.
Hopefully they can punch their ticket to New Orleans on. What is it? Are they playing Saturday or Sunday?
Sunday.
Hopefully they can punch their ticket to New Orleans on Sunday. As for the Ravens, I hope they never win another game in their franchise's history. They don't deserve to. They're the most overrated team in the league. Same goes for Lamar Jackson. So
Wow.
I'm done with the
All right.
Lamar Jackson's the MVP.
I'm done with Lamar.
Now
Wow.
I want to highlight a comment that we got from Timothy Park, right? And it said, not this one, sorry. Poor Chase. His cockiness came back to haunt him. I don't know, Josh, did you go back and watch that episode?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly saw clips of it. I watched parts of it. Yes, I'm aware of the takes. You had a famed guest on here, Chase Coburn, who we do love and support all day. Chase, if you're watching this, Ravens are still pretty good. But yeah, I saw the predictions for that one. I caught a glimpse.
Yeah, now Connor asked if we can put him back on. He was having some technical difficulties.
Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to say, I don't know if it came in because I know I was glitching there. I hope the Commanders win for you on Sunday, and I hope it's tough because the Bills. I'm a Jets fan.
I got Eagles by 20.
If you guys didn't know, I'm a Jets fan here, so I hate the Bills, but also I can't stand Princess Mahomes and the Chiefs. So I'm rooting for. I'm rooting for the Bills here in this game. I hope they punch their ticket to the Super Bowl. Bills Commanders Super Bowl. I'm rooting for the Commanders. Ravens don't deserve to win another game in this league. Most overrated team. Lamar is the most overrated quarterback in all of football. Have a good night, guys.
Well, I guess we got to talk about Ravens-Bills next. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, we
there's
we
no
have
other
that
way.
game. We have that game last, but we're gonna skip ahead to that one.
Yeah.
Obviously, very very passionate Ravens hater right there in
Wow.
Connor. But let's go right over to that game. I mean, you need to start. This was obviously Bills 27-25 victory. You need to start by talking about Mark Andrews. What a bad game this was for Mark Andrews. With 3 minutes 29 seconds left to go, he fumbled the ball, which led to a Tyler Bass field goal that gave Buffalo the lead. And then with with just over a minute remaining, he dropped what would have been obviously the game tying 2-point conversion. And this isn't the first time we've seen Mark Andrews fumble in many ways in the playoffs. He has not performed well in the playoffs in the past. I believe I heard this was his first fumble since 2019, though, actually. So that's kind of a crazy stat, but definitely not the best time for that to come, obviously. We heard what Connor just said about Lamar Jackson. In this game, he went 18 of 25, 254 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and an interception. Derrick Henry, 16 carries, 84 rushing yards, and a touchdown. Isaiah Likely and Rashad Bateman both had 4 receptions, combining for 139 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. Bateman now has 7 touchdown receptions in his last 7 games. And then on the other hand, Josh Allen, really good game from him. 16 of 22, 127 passing yards. Didn't get involved in the passing game actually too much, but he obviously did have his 2 rushing touchdowns in there. And then the Ravens had 143 more yards than the Bills. Now this kind of adds on to the stat of common trends we've been seeing. All 4 winning teams had less yards than the losing team in this round. Which, I mean, that just says that total yards doesn't really mean anything. But yeah, the Ravens did dominate in total yards. And they went 7 of 10 on third down. However, obviously, their 3 turnovers were the main reason that they did end up losing this game. The worst one was probably that Lamar Jackson dropped the ball. I don't know,
Yeah.
Von Miller with the strip sack, if you even want to call it that. I don't
Nah,
really know what
that's
happened
the
there,
drop
but that was
back.
not a great look for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. As Connor said, Lamar Jackson now has a playoff record of 3-5, and the Bills now have a record of 10-0 at home this season. But that will not matter against the Kansas City Chiefs on the road in the AFC Championship game.
All right, I'm going to put the Lamar slander aside for a second here and just
Yeah.
talk about this game straight up. Because the NFL playoffs, to me, and I think it's the way that everyone should look at it right now because it continues to prove true. And Timothy, your comment continues to prove true. Thank you so much for being active. Anyone else in the chat, we'd love to hear what you think of the comments. Or like Connor, you could call in, share your thoughts verbally with us. But it continues to reign true that the team that's going to win is the team that's going to make less mistakes. And that's the only way you could put it. The Bills committed one penalty, 10 yards. Ravens, 2 fumbles lost, 1 interception thrown. The Bills did not turn the ball over, and they only allowed 1 sack. Sure, the Ravens didn't punt. The Ravens almost had double their total yards, or at least more than 100 more total yards. But that really doesn't matter when you're making this many mistakes, and it's not even the Mark Andrews at the final 2-point conversion. That was just the icing on the cake for me. Lamar Jackson, I mean, one of the worst fumbles I will ever see. I don't know what he was thinking. I really don't. That was already a broken play. He tries to do way too much. He tries to do more than way too much with it. Just gives it away. I'm surprised that wasn't a scoop and score. Probably should have been. Von Miller brings it all the way back to the 20 and sets the Bills up in prime position. Mark Andrews caught that football and no ball control whatsoever, turned right into a Bills defender who had an easy punch out, and then an interception thrown as well. They also commit 5 penalties for 43 yards. You can say whatever you want about how efficient the Ravens offense was. I don't really care because of how many penalties, how many mistakes. It continues to kill them. They win this game, Matt, if one of those goes the other way. If one of those goes the other way. Meanwhile, for the Bills, I mean, they just played Buffalo Bills, cold weather, snow on the ground, run you and outsmart you, out cold weather you football, because Josh Allen only throws 16 completions for 127 yards. Yeah, you're thinking to yourself, not great. James Cook, 17 carries for 67 yards, 3.9 average, didn't find the end zone. Not great, but they still put up 27 points. They still get the win. They continue to play Bills playoff football. They've made a culture for themselves. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Baltimore has spoiled their culture. They continue, especially in the Lamar era. Well, pretty much only in the Lamar era, because before that they won the Super Bowl. But in the Lamar era, they continue to not be able to win in the postseason. And yes, you can blame that on Lamar, but Baltimore all around made a lot of mistakes. Derrick Henry played okay. He had that touchdown. Bills did a nice job limiting him to per se what he did last week against the Steelers, and they pick up the win. In an interesting game, now Buffalo goes to Arrowhead to play those Chiefs that we just talked about in another Bills Chiefs episode. Another one going to be for the ages. Can Josh Allen finally get to the Super Bowl? Can he finally beat Patrick Mahomes? But don't worry, that's for next episode. We've got more games to recap.
Yeah, now obviously I do want to talk about the fact that the Andrews fumble, which led to the field goal, as I said earlier, happened with 3 minutes 30 seconds left in the game. What that means is that Baltimore had the lead. Baltimore was winning 25-24 with 3 minutes 30 seconds, and they had the ball. No excuses to lose in that situation. It felt like they were almost trying to lose with how unreasonable it is that the Bills ended up winning this game. It was not a good start for the Ravens, and there's no reason they should have choked that game. And I mean, just a really bad look for a team that cannot obviously get it done in the playoffs. Now we're going to go to the game that actually happened before this one, because we did skip ahead to this game, and that is the Eagles' 28-22 victory over the Los Angeles Rams. Quinyon Mitchell went down with a shoulder injury. Felt like there weren't too many major injuries, but this was definitely one of them. This and the Sam Cosmi one, obviously. Just an opinion, I feel like all NFL stadiums should be forced to have a dome, because it didn't feel like I was getting actual, like, it didn't feel like the Rams obviously weren't playing their best football in this one, but it feels kind of annoying to have a team lose in a game where there's snow covering the ground and you can barely move the ball on offense. Now, I understand that obviously that's something that teams have to prepare for, and that's something teams have to be able to handle, but I just feel like it was kind of annoying, and I know that the NFL would never do this, obviously, and I know that I'm asking for something unrealistic, but I just wish I was able to see a more, you're shaking your head. I wish I was able to see a more, realistic outcome of what this game really should have been.
I can't believe that. I mean, I'm stunned. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that before.
For what? Like,
wow. Every
what?
stadium should have a dome.
Yeah.
I mean,
Every stadium, I guarantee you, could afford a dome.
Come on, it's not about the price, Matt Heiserman. Come on, let's think to ourselves. Football is a cold weather game. Teams have fun in the snow. Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
I'd love to go to a snow game. Are you? I mean, retractable roof, sure. Open it when you want. I mean, no way.
No, I'm more
Cold
saying
weather
I'm saying retractable. I'm saying they should be able to obviously have them open, and then I think that in playoff games, it depends, because I understand where, yes, some players would like to play in the snow, but if you ask Matthew Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams, emphasizing Los Angeles, I guarantee you they didn't want to play in the snow that game.
Yeah, but come on. So you're saying that the Green Bay Packers Lambeau Field home field advantage is eliminated because the teams from the South don't want to play in the cold?
I'm not saying that it would make sense, and I understand that that's not a fair thing to ask. I just think that it would, in this specific game, lead to a more realistic outcome. Because I know that the Rams could have won this game, and they were
Yeah,
just fumbling the
they
ball left and
definitely
right.
could have. You're
Mm,
right. They definitely could have because at the end of the game, Super Bowl's always played in a dome.
yeah,
That's true, but that's because it's first of all, they know it's kind of at this point the Super Bowl at a certain point for certain people is less about the actual football game and more about the entertainment and stuff. And yeah, since it's in February, they don't want it to be outdoors. So that is true, but I don't think it's a fair ask for all the teams to have a dome. But let's get actually into this
yeah,
game because let's talk about it. At the end of the second quarter, 10-13 was the Philly lead. And then they went on a big scoring run and opened it up to 28-15. And that was with 4:36 to play in that fourth quarter. And you're thinking to yourself, down 13 points at that point, do the Rams seriously have a chance? Well, yes, they do. Colby Parkinson from Matt Stafford, 2:48 to play. They get a stop defensively, and then they cannot pull through on fourth down with the game on the line approaching the red zone. They needed a touchdown, which would have won it. Only would have won it because the missed kick, 2 missed extra points, and a missed field goal from Jake Elliott. Talk about a bad day at the office. And honestly, going forward, that's just something that can't happen. You cannot miss 2 extra points and a field goal. I get terrible weather, whatever, blah, blah, blah. NFL kicker playoffs can't be happening. Honestly, can't. And whatever the situation is, whatever conditions you're playing in, it cannot happen. I mean, Matt, we talked about Jalen Hurts sitting back last week, sitting back and just letting his other guys work. And we thought it was apparent last week. But how about 15 completions, 128 yards? His leading receiver on the day, Dallas Goedert, 4 receptions, 56 yards. But let's clap it up for Saquon Barkley. Legitimate MVP candidate right here. Legitimate MVP candidate. And if he doesn't, I get that Lamar has played terrible. I honestly think he might be second in the MVP voting. 26 carries, 205 yards. That's good for 8 yards a carry, 2 touchdowns, including the game sealer when he housed it. Or at least it seemed like it at the moment. But boy, where would Philadelphia be without Saquon Barkley right
yeah.
now? Because oh my goodness, they would not be on their way to a conference championship game. I can tell you that much. Saquon Barkley, absolute certified dog. He
Well,
is legit. He is everything and more you could ask for. And it would have been the icing on the cake if he had broken the rushing record, but he's proven it because in 2 games against the Rams, he has rushed for well over 400 yards and well over 4 touchdowns this season. Los Angeles is scared of Saquon Barkley, and frankly, the rest of the league should be.
I mean, you asked where they would be without him. To be fair, they were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago without him, and their roster hasn't changed very much. But yes,
Yeah, but
this
that's a
season,
different Eagles team. Come on.
yeah, but then you also have to think Jalen Hurts is obviously stepping up a lot more if Saquon's not there. It's
Yeah,
all
no,
it's
I
all
know,
relative.
but
It's all relative to having Saquon Barkley on the team.
I'm just saying the
Yeah,
impact
of
he
course.
makes such a difference maker.
Of course. I mean, last year they lost in the first round
Right.
by a good amount to the Buccaneers. So, I mean, yeah, if you look at it that way, obviously. Philadelphia accounting for sacks, I had just 65 total passing yards. The Rams lost 2 fumbles. As you mentioned, it looked like they could have won this game, but it just didn't go well for them towards the end when they were starting to make that comeback. Jalen Hurts was sacked 7 times, one of which was the safety, and he did suffer a leg injury, but he was able to finish the game and is expected to play next Sunday against the Commanders. Matthew Stafford, pretty solid game. He probably could have worked on his completion percentage accuracy a little bit, but obviously in the snow, you can't ask for too much, completing 26 of 44 passes. Kyron Williams, 106 rushing yards. He averaged, I think, 5.2 yards per carry, if I remember correctly, when I was looking at the box score. And then Puka Nacua was the leading receiver. Jalen hurt his knee in the game. No pun intended, I guess. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out against the Commanders next week if he's fully healthy. Don't wish injuries upon anyone. Hopefully he's not fully healthy next week because I would really appreciate to play Kenny Pickett, who we beat by just 3 points during the regular season, because I'm sure that would be an exciting matchup. But yeah, we will see what his injury is looking like in a few days from now during our tailgate show. There wasn't
Yep.
too much on this game, but I would have much rather played the Rams next round, but I think that the Eagles is also going to be a much more entertaining game, not just for me, but also for everyone else who's watching.
Yeah, Matt. Well, here's the thing: the Eagles kind of break up our trend to a certain extent. They don't turn the ball over, as Timothy mentioned, but come on, 7 sacks allowed and 4 punts, and
Yeah.
they commit 3 penalties wasn't allowed in this game, which I mean I'm kind of surprised. It's easy to commit a bad penalty, a mistake penalty in a bad weather game, but they only commit 3 for 14 yards. But 7 sacks allowed, that takes a beating on Jalen Hurts. The safety does as well. He is hurt. You're right, no pun intended. That's going to be a huge X factor next week against Washington. Can't wait to get into that and so much more on our tailgate show for the conference championship coming up this week. But let's be honest, compared to a couple other of these games, Philadelphia did not play lights out, and they beat a Rams team that squeaked right into the playoffs. Yeah, I mean, as the 4 seed, but that's only because they won their division. There was better teams below them in the rankings. And so Philadelphia, even without Quinyon Mitchell, and obviously that's going to be a big blow to their secondary. We'll see if he plays. Even if he does, he won't be 100%. Even though Philadelphia comes out on top, there were some concerns for this Eagles team. Saquon Barkley was not one of them. And obviously, in the snow game, you don't expect Jalen Hurts to pass the football that much. But I think Washington presents them a real problem next week. And I'm really excited to see, because as 2 division rivals who hate each other to start out with, now they're going to fight for a trip to the Super Bowl. Matt, your blood's probably already pumping for that game on Sunday. And us NFL fans of the other 30 teams, we're going to sit back and enjoy what should be a great one.
28 teams, right? I guess
There's
not
30.
including Chiefs fans and Bills fans, because they're probably going to be sweating a little bit too.
Right, yeah, so 28 teams, right?
Yeah,
All the
28 teams.
teams of everyone who's knocked out. Yeah, there's 28.
I don't really remember past years in terms of their divisional rounds, but I would probably say that this is one of the most exciting divisional or conference championships that we've seen both sides in a while. These are
Well,
2 matchups that I'm obviously looking forward to. With that being said, can't thank you enough for coming on. Really do appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to say to the people watching before we wrap things up?
Thanks so much for listening. We appreciate all the support. See you guys for the tailgate show, which should be coming up in a little bit. Matt, do you want to do weekly wrap before we sign off here? I'm good either way.
I forgot about the weekly wrap. We do have to do that. Yes.
All right, weekly wrap. Well, you want to start it off, or do you want me to go first?
I can start. This is an interesting one, obviously, with everything that happened with Mark Andrews in this past game. Do they move on from him? Because obviously, Andrews, 5,530 receiving yards in his past 7 years of his career, his entire career, 51 touchdowns. He has been a really, really big tool for them, a really big asset. And I understand he can't deliver in the playoffs. Do you value his performance in the playoffs so much that you would cut him, or you would release him, or you would not sign him?
Matt, I wouldn't even ponder it. Mark Andrews is a lock for the Baltimore Ring of Honor. He is going to be probably a Hall of Fame tight end, possibly. He did so much in past Ravens years to get the team to where they are today. He is such a good player. I get it. Playoff choker, you can't have it. But remember, you played 17 regular season games to get you up to this point to even be there. And Mark Andrews always does play a significant role in how good or how competitive Baltimore is each and every season. So these are 2 terrible mistakes, and 2 that really can't happen. But I would not question one of the better receivers in Ravens history cutting him because he is not great in the playoffs, because he made 2 mistakes. And for those of you at home watching, this was not like the beginning of Mark Andrews' playoff struggles. Like Lamar Jackson, I mean, it hasn't been pretty. But what I'll tell you now is that he means way too much in the regular season. And he means way too much to the team for me to begin to question cutting him. I think that there's a problem that you need to fix about the Ravens culture and their what happens in the playoffs there, but I don't think it starts with cutting Mark Andrews.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you look at it that way, you could say, why don't we cut Lamar Jackson if he's been bad in the playoffs? And I mean, that's another way to look at it. But if you want to dive into the statistics a little more, Andrews hasn't gotten 650 or at least 700 receiving yards in his past 2 seasons. With that being said, I know he obviously does make a massive impact. And if there's any injuries, if this Ravens receiver core isn't looking amazing, which it didn't this year, led by Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman, obviously Andrews does step up as a massive option. So I do agree with you there, but I do think it's something to also keep in mind throughout the remainder of his career.
All right, Matt. Well, I get a question for you on your Washington Commanders. If Jaden Daniels in the offseason says, I love it here in Washington and I want to be a commander for however long you guys want to give him, if you were the GM, what would your contract for him look like? How much would you be willing to give you? Well, he's taken his Commanders on a run this year. He's looked extremely confident. He's played extremely well. He has single-handedly led this team to a conference championship appearance with a chance to win or to play for the Super Bowl title, the Vince Lombardi trophy. And if he walked into your office, Matt, would you be ready and willing to sit down and lock him up for the next 8 to 10 years? Because he's a rookie. He has so much potential. Do you think that this is sustainable? Will Jaden Daniels be this good for this long?
At least 70 mil a year for Jaden.
There's a salary cap.
I guess this is a hypothetical because obviously he did sign a 4-year contract, so he won't be a free agent till 2028, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, he's definitely proven enough that he can be a franchise quarterback. As I mentioned, all you need is a franchise quarterback. Then over the next few years, you can build those pieces. And I was actually thinking about this earlier. I feel like the Falcons would be a championship contending team if they had a quarterback like Jaden Daniels, because they have kind of done an opposite route where it feels like they have the pieces. And I know this is kind of a random thought, but it feels like they have the pieces with like Bijan, Drake London. They've built one of the better surrounding casts. They went out, got a lot of free agents. They expected an old Kirk Cousins to be that guy. He didn't end up doing anything for them. So I feel like that's kind of where the rest of the Commanders team would like to be in the future, having those surrounding pieces to make this Washington team a contender in every single year. Make back-to-back Super Bowls in the future, and probably win one, maybe more than one Super Bowl in the future. And I do think that Jaden Daniels has already proved enough to be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL right now, and probably the best quarterback in the NFL in a few years once we see the wave of Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, all those guys start to retire. Jaden Daniels is going to be the face of the NFL. Now, if I had to give a contract, so let's see, what's like the craziest contract? What's the biggest contract? I mean,
we're looking at north of 50 a year.
Yeah, I mean, we saw like a 5-year, 220 mil for Trevor Lawrence. Jordan Love's getting around that money.
Yeah.
If I did it right now, it depends. Are you letting me do it in 2028 or making me do it this offseason?
Sign an extension. So right now, I mean, yeah, I'd say ignore the salary cap. It's more of how committed are you to Jaden Daniels? Like, do you think he's your guy for double-digit years?
Yeah, in that sense, extremely committed, and I'd probably go around like 5 years to 30 to 250, somewhere around that range, which would, I believe, be the biggest contract in NFL history. But for how young Jaden Daniels is, that's obviously worth it, in my opinion.
Matt, do you see any resemblance of Jaden Daniels and a guy like Jordan Love had in his rookie year or even last year with the Cowboys, and then he inked that huge extension and his Packers team wasn't as great this year? Or do you think Jaden Daniels, like, I mean, you mentioned it before, he could be the face of the NFL, But I mean, there's always a chance at a bust, but also Jaden Daniels, I feel like, at least to me and probably to you too, has proved way too much in just not even a season that's over yet, and still an ongoing rookie season, to say that he has the potential to not pan out over a long-term span.
He's been 10 times better than both CJ Stroud and Jordan Love were last season, and that might be an understatement. He's breaking records as a rookie. He is doing all this as a rookie with a not as good surrounding cast. There's no
Yeah.
doubt, to be honest, as a kind of paranoid Commanders fan, I wouldn't be surprised if we went back to 4 wins next season. But I'm hoping for the best. I'm hoping for the best. And I do believe that Jaden Daniels will be able to bring the best in the future.
All right. Well,
Yeah, I think we're going to have to wrap things up right now. For everyone who made it up to this point, obviously can't thank you enough for watching. The NFL season is coming to an end very shortly. We'll have to decide if we do anything over the off season, but it's going to be a while till we have these tailgate recap shows for a little while. So enjoy them while they last. We have 2 more weeks of them until the end of the year. Again, I'm Matthew Heiserman alongside Josh Wolver for your Divisional Round Highlight Haven NFL recap show. And as always, we will see you next time.